This particular video clip is from November 12th, 2023. The rest of the clips will follow sequentially, in the order that they were recorded, unless otherwise specified. Last year, with the holidays in sight, I felt like my time might be better put to use by paying attention to what it was that I was doing, experiencing the actual quiet that comes from nature itself, and seeing for myself if there are miracles to be found in Mother Nature. Blending insights from the peaceful and the people who may claim to have a different belief, I was able to experience certain phenomena myself. One time I fasted in the desert and was awakened and greeted by this. Pay close attention to the sound she makes as she walks off through the brush. This was the glorious sunrise that the bear and I were both treated to after peacefully communicating our plan of non-attack. I had to retire the tent that you're seeing here. It suffered significant damage after my recent outings to Yellowstone and Glacier National Park. I try to make a point of not making too much noise so that I'm not disturbing the wildlife and nature around me. You can hear during this very recording itself, recorded in Big Bend National Park, that there are a lot of circumstances that sometimes disturb the peace. Countless families pass through these areas oblivious to the sounds of the wildlife around them. Also, for those of you new to this journey with me, I was in the stages of critical hypertension for a great portion of time throughout the past decades before doing something that I already knew would actually begin to work. So I would take a holistic approach, leaving early in the morning to go to these hot springs and see the things that would possibly come by from, I guess, dusk until dawn.
This has been a great hike, whether we find the red buffalo or not.
It's unbelievable.
It's into the light, so.
My grandparents' house. It says U.S. Park Ranger.
But a Christmas cactus Christmas card set, or, you know, with features, that would be,
It can be really quiet out here, but more often than not, it's either devastatingly silent or it's just ridiculously loud. It's hard to hear oneself think. But when I hear myself think, I think about the times that I've yelled at people or been short with people. Like, for an example, one time recently in Big Bend National Park, some people outside were making such a racket that I had to raise my voice enough to be heard by them, and I asked them to be quiet. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you'll know that my feet healed pretty quickly the last time I came to take a dip in the restorative hot springs at Big Bend National Park. Here I am fumbling around with a kettlebell and trying my best to balance and hang from limbs out in nature, something that I might one day be required to do in the event of, let's say, for an example, a natural disaster. In circumstances where we might have to scale trees to get to higher ground, that might come in handy. So again, here I am fumbling around with my efforts at balance and coordination. But here's one thing I was able to really continue to coordinate. Eating fresh food is probably the number one beneficial way to transform oneself next to earthing. One of the main things to also consider is your hydration level. There are a lot of different elements that you're going to expose yourself to in nature, and you may become more dehydrated than normal. Speaking of dehydration, can we get some group prayers going for some reasonable rainfall to help the wildlife? The wildlife is definitely having some challenges, just like the people are. After healing my feet at the hot springs last year, during which the temperatures were approximately the same as this year, I had an opportunity to test a theory. I began to hypothesize that maybe the illnesses and the effects that I was expressing, like for an example in my blood pressure, had to do with communication difficulties, primarily among my own family members in most cases, unfortunately. So this was back then after a few days of spending some time in restorative nature. Along my journey, I decided to spend 40 days fasting, and I did that primarily in places of nature like Glacier, Yellowstone, and Rocky Mountain National Parks. So I recently received a message from the family member who uninvited me from the family get-together, only to say to me finally that they're not mad at anybody, and also, curiously, that they are not hurt by the decision they made. Why did they refuse conversations in public with the rest of our family? If you noticed, due to an elevation change and or that, my VO2 max went down by 2 full points. That was something that was unusual. Welcome back, everybody. For some of you who recognize the change in watches, you're going to recognize there also was a change in time frames. This video clip was recorded on November 30th, 2024. Big Agnes helped me out when my prior tent failed after some time, and they applied a credit for my old tent towards this newer current version of that same exact tent. I especially like the darker color of the main fabric, and that seems to have kept the interior of the tent quite a bit darker throughout the night. It's a little creepy actually to walk around out here in the desert and hear it so quiet. Take a listen. It's extremely quiet right now. You can't hear any birds chattering. You don't hear any insects buzzing. It's not to say there are no birds or insects here. It's just an observation that I continue to point out as something that seems to be increasingly common in ways that people don't seem to acknowledge because they're a little bit fearful of what that would mean if this were true. really cold out here. Doing my 10-minute warm-up before I have to run, I think 7 miles today. I mean, that's what I'm scheduled to do. We'll see what happens. So today I'm testing out 3 shoes a week before the big run, and looking around because I'm coming up on that place where the bear came out of the brush up ahead. You just never know what you're gonna run into. So in addition to having a bear wake me up at my tent, about 1.5 years or 2 ago, I also had an encounter running on this very road where a bear, appearing to want to ambush me, decided against that and then took off running in the opposite direction. I was able to record this, and it was during an unusual time of extreme weather anomalies. Right now I've got some Puma MagMax on, and I really like them, but I just ran the first 2 miles in my Hylo impact, which I bet fewer than 1%, if that, will have those on at the marathon. And the other ones I have with me are some Brooks Ghost Max 2 with some insoles, some special insoles. I'm gonna run in those next, and I'm just keeping the pace nice and slow, going about 15-minute miles here. And like I say, in the first shoe, I didn't have really hardly any noteworthy feedback from my toe that's healing, that will have healed by the time you see this. And right now I'm just narrowing down the shoes like I told you. Stay tuned. I think rather than switching to the Brooks next, I'm gonna wear the Hylo, because I know for a fact I didn't hurt running uphill or downhill in those for the first 2 miles. Wearing these, the pain is very similar to what I've been experiencing all along, except for that significantly reduced volume of pain. Anyway, what I'll do once I'm done with this, I'll finish the next 2 miles in my Hylo, and then that'll put me at 6 miles, and I'll just run 1 mile in the Brooks. That way, if they feel significantly better, I'll do a shootout between the Hylo and the Brooks. Thumbs up. I didn't stop my watch when I switched shoes, switched socks, took my hydration supplements, or when I experienced magical moments like this, where we are currently looking at a family of scaled quail. These birds are exceedingly shy and oftentimes will take flight if you get a little bit too close for their comfort. So I try not to rouse them into flight. Did you see those quail? How cool. Haven't seen too many of those over the past few years. They're here, just a lot less than normal. So it's really a treat to see some of this wildlife. All right, here comes the next 2 miles. Then I'll have 1 mile to go. Have you guys ever played the game Pac-Man? Check it out, I'm having some power pellets. Can you see them? Grapes.
15:59.
All right, so I just hit 6 miles.
I slowed down right at the crest of this hill because I'm about to sit down anyway and switch shoes. These shoes are tremendously different. All I gotta say is I'm still trying to convince myself to switch to the last pair of shoes that I was gonna test out, because these minimized and mitigated most of the pain that I was originally feeling. And so had I not switched to the other shoes, I might barely have even known that I was hurt to begin with. That's how different these are. Anyway, I'm gonna try the third pair of shoes and finish up my 7-mile effort. So now I'm testing the Ghost Max with the special insoles. They feel pretty good too. Starting to wonder if I should have worn those for a full 2 miles, but I have a feeling that this last mile will be a good test.
Average pace 17:01. Interval completed 7 miles. Cool down 10 minutes.
So, similar to the MagMax, there's a different feeling when I'm walking versus when I'm running. In this shoe, the difference is so different that I'm gonna run the last part of my cool down, at least for this uphill portion, because it hurts less.
Some of my overall stats, including the lactate threshold, the heart rate, maximum heart rate, and also my VO2 max, were adjusted, possibly because of the altitude at which I'm running for this particular round of training. So on this particular day, I went almost 8 miles, which is not even a third of the distance of an entire marathon. And I did that at a higher altitude and with some pleasant conditions, similar to last year when I was here. So to catch you up, right now I am at Big Bend National Park at the hot springs. It is exactly 2 hours from sunset. Sunset is at 5:55 p.m. and I think that I'm gonna take a flashlight with me, but it's gonna be a backup. I'm gonna try to use probably just my wristwatch for lighting on the way back. And with all of that being said, I'm just waiting until it's the appropriate time to embark upon this healing hot springs journey. Stay tuned. Thanks for riding along. Peace, love, and all that old school stuff.